This public meeting to order. My name is Carl Granrath. I'm the hearing examiner this evening. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to allow me to receive evidence and testimony on the matters that are pending. So I will eventually make a recommendation to the county commissioners. So this is a reminder that I'm not the decision maker. Your county commissioners are those who are responsible for ultimately making the decision on this application. I'll submit my recommendation based on tonight's testimony and evidence within 2 weeks of tonight, and I'll get scheduled with the county commissioners for deliberations. So as I see most of you here have submitted slips indicating you may wish to speak. I'll let you know when that time comes. As far as procedure, I'm sure some of you have been here before. I recognize some faces, but for everybody's edification, we'll have the staff introduce the application, and then the applicant will have up to 30 minutes to present testimony and evidence for their application. Any member of the public who does appear, whether physically here or virtually, will have up to 5 minutes each to enter comment. And then depending on how this works out, how long your presentation is, and there's multiple people of you, everyone will get a chance to speak, whether that's on behalf of your application or as a member of the public. So we'll get to that when we get there. Other than that, I believe we should be ready to go. And Vlad will be presenting for the county.
Good evening. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. This is a request, case number MSP 210007, Revelstoke Ranch by Trail Creeks Development LLC. The subject property comprises of 3 acres, totaling 98.5 acres in size. The property is located directly to the west of Silverwood Theme Park. It's accessed by Old Highway 95. The property is fairly level. There's very little slope to the site, and as you can see based on the aerial overlay, a portion of it was likely logged at some point. It's like pasture land, and then the eastern portion of the property that's adjacent to Silverwood property is forested. The current zoning designation is rural, which allows for parcels 5 acres in size. As you can see, the adjacent zoning to the east is commercial, and it is the area of Silverwood Theme Park. The 2 properties have a railroad right-of-way in between them. The development directly to the north, west, and south is predominantly residential development comprising of parcels that are 5 acres in size or slightly greater, and therefore the proposed development would be consistent and compatible with the current residential development in the area. The comp plan designation is suburban on the subject property, and the suburban comp plan designation does allow for underutilized vacant parcels to be further developed, including subdivisions. As you can see, the comp plan designation directly to the north is transitional, and that part of the county is within the city of Athol area of city impact. Because this property is immediately to the south of it, staff did not feel it was necessary to solicit comments from the city of Athol, as they would not be able to provide any sufficient or adequate infrastructure improvements in the event that there was some need for them to address this any further. The subject property, or the request, would consist of 20 residential lots. Each lot would meet the minimum requirement of 4.5 acres net and 5 acres gross. The internal road system, there would be 2 access points. This is facing north. The 2 access points would be off of Old Highway 95. The internal road system would be improved to the associated highway district standards pursuant to our code and highway district regulations, but it would be privately maintained through the establishment of a homeowners association as well as CCNRs. Water would be provided by Gem State Water, and effluent discharge would be treated with individual septic systems. These are some of the photos of the property. This area is, the lower photos are of the area that is on the west side of the property along Highway 95, Old Highway 95, which is denuded, and then the rest of the area is fairly well treed. Because a portion of this property is within a timbered area, we did have a requirement for a wildfire mitigation plan as a condition of approval that must be submitted as part of the final plat review, and it needs to be cross-referenced on the face of plat if it's a separate document, or it could be embedded as into the CCNRs. This is a list of public agencies that we solicited comments from. A majority of the comments are fairly standard. Kootenai County Building Division had comments for future building permits on each lot. Gem State had a will-serve letter, and I'd like to go into the detail of that after I discuss the rest of the agencies. Lakes Highway District had the applicant comply with their standard requirements and enter into a road development agreement, which does include road improvements as well as, in their view, impact fees for future improvements adjacent to this plat. Panhandle Health District had general requirements for future septic permits. Fire had fire suppression requirements and installation of fire hydrants. Fish and Game had standard language for wildlife-friendly requirements in the CCNRs, which we have as a condition of approval. DEQ had standard state regulations as well as water connection requirements for the extension of the main for Gem State Water and distribution lines to serve each lot. IDWR had some questions regarding water rights reallocation, and Solid Waste had a statement about securing the agreement for refuse removal. So I'd like to get into a couple of the comments, and I'd like to have Eric Olson with Olson Engineering provide further comments and clarification when he comes up to the podium. We ran into a bit of a, I don't think it's an issue, but maybe some clarification needs to be pointed out, is that IDWR pointed out to us that it appears based on their records that Bitterroot Water has the water rights within that area, and that we found out later that Gem State Water had purchased Bitterroot Water, but the state records perhaps may have not been accurately addressed to convey the existing water rights from Bitterroot Water to Gem State. I'd like to have Mr. Olson address that. But we did get a clarification from Gem State that they are aware of this and that they would be working with the applicant to address water rights with IDWR and address any necessary improvements to the existing water system and provide services to this plat. The other thing is, I don't know, I think IDWR also pointed out that this property may not be within the geographical boundaries of the service area for either Bitterroot Water or Gem State. So it appears to me that there might be some sort of annexation process that the property would have to go through prior to final plat process with the county to meet the requirements of the water district. And I'd like to have Mr. Olson address that as well. But that's the only unique set of circumstances that we ran into with this project as we reviewed it. During the agency comment period, we received very few comments, 2 in opposition, 1 neutral. Some of the comments and concerns from the public, we as staff don't find to be really all that problematic. While we acknowledge them and we understand what the public is saying, I believe that there is always additional burden on emergency response with any development. I don't think it is particularly with this project because of its density or location. So I don't find that to be an issue. Increasing traffic and road maintenance, well, of course, that's the case. But the highway district did not specifically state any concerns or the need for anything that was out of the ordinary. School capacity challenges, we have been through this before. Unfortunately, as you know from previous, most recent presentations, there is currently no state mechanism for impact fees or some sort of financial obligation for our developers to be financially responsible and provide that to the school district in order to address school capacity challenges and incoming students. So unfortunately, while that is a legitimate concern at this time, there's no real solution. Impact to utility providers, I'm not sure, other than power company, it appears that water has been addressed with Gem State, DEQ, as well as IDWR, and each lot will have its own septic system, so I don't find there to be any significant issue with that concern. Lastly, staff analysis. We believe that, based on my statements, that the development west of Silverwood Theme Park is consistent with what the applicant is proposing, that this project is compatible with surrounding development, and therefore we don't find it to be somehow detrimental or standing out as a potential issue should it be approved. Therefore, we believe that the applicant must comply with the public agency's requirements, and the applicant shall construct shared infrastructure improvements prior to final plat approval or bond for them accordingly, as stated per our code. I stand for any questions that you have.
Yes, thanks, Vlad. So you did solicit comment from, I believe it's the Lakeland School District? And when you submitted your report, they hadn't commented. Just wanted to make sure they hadn't submitted comments since then.
They have not submitted comments on this project, but they have submitted on the other ones. I don't know why they didn't, but I would assume if they did, the position would be the same. I don't think anything would change from any other ones that I'm processing. In fact, I'm processing one right now that had an identical response to the one that was recently approved off of Highway 54 and Highway 41. That was the Dolan deal. We have processed other ones like Humbird Acres off of Scarcello. And so there's been numerous subdivisions that we recently received comments on. I don't know, perhaps it's slipped through the cracks, but I don't think there would be much of a difference on this one from the others. I just don't see there any solution at this point until something is done at state level, whether the legislature wants to come up with some sort of federal or state mechanism to impose impact fees for the upgrades to the school district infrastructure.
Okay, I suppose where my mind is going, and I think this might end up relating to what the highway district has requested as far as their how to say it. I'm not even sure to call them impact fees exactly because I do generally agree with your analysis of the state law and local ordinances. But we do have my findings of fact 6.08, which I believe is subsection H of 86204C2, that does have the language of any request by an agency for actions to be taken or fees to be paid to mitigate impacts of a subdivision shall be recommended as a condition of preliminary approval unless the proposed actions or fees are roughly proportional, both in nature and extent, to the impact of proposed development. Do you think that the highway district's request for those fees falls into this section, or is there authority to request those fees under a different section?
Before I answer that, I'd like to place on record a disclaimer. I'm not an attorney, nor am I going to pretend to be one, but from my recollection, David Callahan and I have had this discussion along with our legal counsel, Pat Braden. We believe that because this has not been challenged in the past by the public, the highway district has proceeded with their requirements. If it had been challenged, we don't know what the outcome would be. The other issue is that the highway district signs the plat. So unfortunately, unless the applicant satisfies the specific requirements, it's unlikely that they would sign the plat and it would be recorded.
And
Having
then
said
obviously
that,
the school district doesn't sign the plat.
that's true. Having said that, if you were to consider requiring some sort of financial mitigation and it was challenged or it was appealed by the applicant through the reconsideration process or through court, I don't know if our legal counsel could support that. But that's probably a question for our legal counsel.
Thanks, you. And I suppose it may be moot, at least as far as the school district for this application, because they didn't request fees, so.
And for any others ones that we're processing until state law changes.
Okay, thank you for your comments. All right, and I have a few of you here. I believe Mr. Olson for the applicant.
I'm Mr. Olson.
Oh,
Jeremy's going to be making the presentation tonight, but he'll call me up for if he needs me.
okay. Oh, there we go. All right.
Mr. Hearing Examiner,
Yes, sir, Mr. Callahan.
while we're waiting, just something to think about for this case and other future cases. There's nothing in the law that prevents the school district and the developer from discussing these matters or from coming up with a voluntary contribution which they could present through this process. And it seems to me that the developers and the school district could at least have conversations. And that way, in these hearings, we could at least have an idea of something that might be useful. So that would be my one suggestion going forward.
All right, thank you. And I was expecting to ask the applicant about communication such as that, but without jumping the gun on that. But I'll let you go on with your presentation. With foreshadowing.
Good evening, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Jeremy Truzuli with Project Coordinator with Olson Engineering, located at 55 Cedar Street in Post Falls. I do have Eric Olson, Daniel Brands. They are the engineers for this project. I'm going to go over a brief PowerPoint outlining how we feel this complies with the standards set forth. Vlad did a good job. There will be some redundancies, so I'll try to move through those pretty quickly. About halfway through, we'll have Eric come up and talk about his communication with the water district, and we'll see if we can't get some clarification on that. Okay. Brief overview, as Vlad had pointed out, 20 residential lots being proposed. The internal roads right now are proposed as being private, but will be designed to highway district standards if the highway district chooses to adopt those roads in the future. Property doesn't have any structures on it at this time. It's vacant pasture land, the eastern portion of it mostly treed, and it is mostly flat. A little bit of topography, but not a whole lot. There were no wetlands or sensitive areas that were identified in the area. It is in the rural zoning, and the intention is to build it in a single phase. And I'm going backwards. Okay, so with each one of these applications, the applicant is asked to meet certain standards of approval. I'm going to go through those one by one. I'll move through some of them quite quickly. Items 1, 2, and 3 tend to be approval standards based on the application being complete and meeting all the requirements that Kootenai County has. We did submit the application to the online portal. And then pre-application, as you know, and most people in this room do know, before we ever even get to an application point, a potential project goes before a pre-development meeting with county officials with county staff. Sometimes that's one, sometimes that's two, tend to be some follow-up phone calls, and then we move to the application, which we did. We go through line by line all of the items required in table 6.201 of code. We uploaded all of those to the portal. The application was processed, deemed complete, and we moved forward. Any additional requirements in table 6201 tend to be, that is broken up into two categories, one for pre-plat, which is where we're at, and then one for final plat, and we will have no issues meeting the requirements of the final plat. So we did notice some public comment, so I'm going to spend a little time on item 4, that provisions of code can be met with no variances being requested. We are not requesting any variances, but there is a little confusion, and one of the public comments did point out the fact that they felt that the application and the proposal was not in compliance with county code. So I snipped this section right out of county code where it identifies how gross acreage versus net acreage is calculated. So we take the gross acreage of the site, which ends up being a little over 102 gross acres when measured to the center line of the right-of-way. That's where we got our density calculation of 20 units on that 100-acre gross site. The net acreage is taken from the dedication of the right-of-way, and then those lots that abut the right-of-way on Old Highway 95 will show up as net acreage less than 5 acres, but still greater than 4.5 acres. So the gross acreage does comply with this standard, and the net acreage of being greater than 4.5 also complies with this standard. So I just wanted to offer some clarification on that for the member of the public that did speak out and felt that maybe this was not in compliance. And I'm going backwards again. Requirements of the agencies with jurisdiction. Vlad pointed out all the agencies that get looped in on this process. Through preliminary plat, some of those agencies offer review at that time. They do request fees for that review. Any agency that did request review fees, those review fees have been paid. Reviews are ongoing. We're actively engaged with the districts and the agencies that I've listed up there. And again, the rest of them, as we move through the plat process, Olson Engineering is very, very familiar with the process, has done multiple subdivisions in multiple jurisdictions within Kootenai County. We have good working relationships with everybody from Kootenai Electric Co-op to Avista, to the fiber providers, and on down the list. So we're actively engaged with all of these agencies up here, and we, again, don't feel we'll have any problem meeting the requirements of these agencies. This is where I wanted to bring Eric in to talk about his communication with Gem State Water District specifically. With regard to Gem State, and Vlad did lay it out pretty well, there was an acquisition of the previous water district, and there seems to be a little bit of disconnect with where the water rights are being transferred. We believe it's just a little bit of growing pains with Gem State. They are a little slow to respond, and I'm going to call Eric Olson up to speak a little bit more about that correspondence and where we feel we stand with that.
Good evening, Eric Olson, Olson Engineering. So I don't have any, the update I have is basically, we understand there's an issue is in terms of water rights conveyance, some cleanup and paperwork. We understand we need to annex into the district. Gem State's aware of these. They're willing to serve the project. We see that there's a condition of approval in the staff report, basically requiring the applicant to resolve these issues. And we're comfortable with that condition of approval and do not see it as an issue.
Short and sweet. Yeah, so as Eric pointed out, there is that acquisition by Gem State. We're just working through the process. We truly don't, we know it's a condition of approval. We know we have to have the will serve finalized. We know we have to have infrastructure, mainline extensions of that water line, and they won't be able to provide water to the subdivision until we get these things cleaned up, and we're actively working through them. We believe as we move through the process, we're going to get that resolved. So item number 6 on our conditions of approval is with regard to compatibility of the surrounding uses and an orderly development. So this is a fairly broad view of the general area. As Vlad mentioned, to the east is Silverwood Theme Park, on the other side of the railroad right-of-way. I did this clever little overlay of our plat onto the area, and as you can see, it is almost all 5-acre lots, a couple of 10 acres sprinkled in there, with single-family residences throughout. So we believe this is as seamless as it gets with regard to neighborhood context and orderly development. We're not even skipping over another larger parcel. We're kind of just moving the 5-acre parcels strategically to the north. So item number 7, that the subdivision will add and include adequate open space. It also talks about site disturbance, erosion, and environmental impacts. And due to the fact that this is a subdivision comprised of all 5-acre lots, single-family dwellings is all that's being proposed on there. We anticipate minimal site disturbance in order to build the road. There's no intention to remove any more trees than necessary to clear lots for home sites and driveways. The vast majority of the home sites are going to be closer to the road than the back of the property where it's treed, simply for simplicity. Roadside swales will be constructed per the district standards for stormwater and stormwater remediation. Again, we feel there's going to be very, very little site disturbance impact on the site. Number 8, services. Number 8 speaks a lot about the services with regard to electricity, natural gas if available, refuse collection, emergency medical services, fire. And so going back a slide, as you can, going back a slide, all of these residences in the area are currently being served by all of those services. Old Highway 95 is a very wide road. We have the recent interchange at Highway 95 just south of Silverwood, which is flows nicely. It's got adequate county-maintained roads all the way up to the subdivision. Roads within the subdivision will be subject to a road maintenance agreement within the covenants, so we feel that services will be, the property will be adequately and easily served by all of those entities.
So while we're on that, because the number 8 is the section that I quoted when Vlad was up here before.
Correct.
It does include schools, and so
Correct.
I understand that this is a topic that's up in the air. I'm not sure how it's going to land. So if you have an opportunity to comment about
It with regard to
Any
schools,
communications
and
with
I was
schools?
actually a part of the Dolan's deal one as well when the school did chime in. It's a bit of a conundrum. I feel that, as Vlad does, and I think everybody here, that there needs to be some mechanism if the school feels there's gonna be an undue hardship put on them, by additional growth. I don't know what that mechanism is, and I'll also trumpet what Vlad said. I'm not an attorney, and I don't know how it would hold up if there was a challenge one way or the other on that item. What I can say is that a 20-lot subdivision on 5-acre lots with current home prices in Kootenai County, I would anticipate that perhaps less than half of these will be purchased by people that have kids within the school district. There's a good chance that the price point is going to be out of reach for a lot of working class people. I think we would see retirees moving here. And again, it's 20. I would anticipate half or less to have households with school-age children in them. That's about the best I think I could do on that.
Yeah, and I understand. I appreciate your candor too. I guess I would just say that I will perhaps echo Mr. Callahan and say that I hope you can build a relationship with the school district as well, up to the level that you have with the other agencies and divisions you deal with in the area too.
Yeah,
So
it's complicated.
it is.
Complicated.
And impact fees are a complicated topic anyway, so I won't take us too far afield.
We talk a lot about it internally within the office and those types of things, and I don't know the path forward.
Indeed. Well, again, I thank you for your comments. So,
Okay, number 9, is that, it speaks about roadways and pedestrian, sidewalks, multi-use paths, those types of things, making sure they're sufficient. Again, the highway district has to review our plan set and approve our plan set, and they're ready to approve our plans for a rural subdivision like this. 5-acre lots, the roadway itself will act as that pedestrian thoroughfare. People will be able to walk around the private road with a lower speed limit, ride their ATVs, their horses, bicycling. All those things will happen on the roadway. We're not proposing any multi-use paths because each resident will have 5 acres to recreate on. And again, we've paid the review fees. We've agreed to the highway district's conditions of approval, and they did request impact fees to be allocated where they see fit. They don't have to apply to this development. So if we do, or if people start to see traffic congestion on Bruner and Old Highway 95, the highway district will have $150,000 worth of funds, which to put in perhaps some turn bays if they feel it's prudent at that time. So we're working actively with the highway district. Item 10 is that the groundwater will not be significantly affected by the proposal. That's a summarized version of that. And it is our estimation that with the highway district standards for the stormwater treatment and the roadside swales, the working with the water district, we won't be sourcing water through individual wells or creating our own community system out here. Wastewater will be handled through individual septics on each lot. Those septics will need to go through Panhandle Health District approval for effluent. Panhandle Health District governs those types of things, works closely with the county, and their standards are doing a good job of keeping our aquifer pure. And although this one isn't directly over the aquifer, I know that is a hot button issue for some people, and these septic systems will need to be designed and built to the most stringent standards as they currently exist and approved by Panhandle Health District. So we don't anticipate any significant impact on the groundwater in the area. And then number 11 on our standards of approval does talk about the public noticing and if we have an adequate and a legal public hearing, and county staff does a great job of noticing, soliciting comment from all the agencies and from the public. So that noticing has occurred. And that concludes my presentation for this evening. We do believe that the project is supported by the comprehensive plan. We do believe it's in compliance with the county code. We do believe it meets all the relevant criteria, and our request is a recommendation to approve. I'm here for any questions, and I also have both engineers here if you have any questions for them.
yeah, I think just real quick, I have one note. Have you, I forget exactly what I was going to ask, with the garbage pickup and disposal, you're still working on
We saw that it came in that Kootenai County Solid Waste was looking to secure the contract
Okay.
out there.
all right.
I know there's a couple of smaller providers out there as well. But yeah, we're
Not anticipated to be a problem either.
not at all.
Okay. Before I let you go, I'll double check my notes. Okay, that's all questions I have for you. If any of the other individuals wish to speak or add comments, you may do so now in any order you desire. I believe it's just all of you who are applicants and or representatives, correct? Got
Yes,
Jeremy
that's it here. I don't know if we have anybody in Cyberland that's gonna comment.
Mr. Callahan, anyone in Cyberland?
There's no public representative.
Okay, unless there's anything else from staff and no other members of the public have arrived. Okay, then I will, at 6:34 PM, close tonight's public hearing for MSP 21-0007. Everyone have a good night.